Story 1. The motel room beside the ice machine. I used to travel a lot for work doing inventory audits for small pharmacy chains around western Pennsylvania and Ohio. It wasn't some glamorous business trip thing either. Most of the time I was driving 4 or 5 hours to count pill bottles in towns that looked abandoned after 8 p.m. This happened in November of 2022, and I remember that specifically because it was freezing outside, but the motel still hadn't turned the heat on properly yet. I checked into this place a little after 10:30 p.m. after driving almost 6 straight hours. The motel was one of those long 2-story layouts where every room door faces the parking lot. Faded blue railings, cigarette burns on the stairs, the kind of place where the ice machine somehow sounds louder than traffic. They put me in room 214, right beside the ice machine. At first it was honestly just annoying. Every 20 minutes somebody would slam the metal lid shut. Around midnight I finally gave up trying to sleep and turned the TV on low while answering emails on my laptop. That's when I started noticing the guy across the walkway. His room was directly opposite mine, maybe 20 feet away. The curtains were open, but only halfway, and I could see him sitting in a chair near the window. Not moving, just sitting there facing outward. I remember thinking maybe he fell asleep sitting up or something. Then around 12:41 a.m., I heard the ice machine again. Somebody came up the stairs, filled a bucket, walked away. Normal motel noises. But the guy across from me never reacted. Didn't move his head. Didn't blink. Nothing. I noticed because literally everyone reacts when that machine slams shut. It sounded like somebody dropping a toolbox. I ended up taking a shower and trying to ignore it. By maybe 1:15 a.m., I finally got into bed. And then I heard footsteps outside my room, slow ones, not passing by, just stopping. I muted the TV and waited. Nothing happened for maybe 15 seconds. Then I heard ice pouring into a bucket again. Except the machine wasn't running. It was quieter than before. Softer, like someone slowly moving ice around by hand. I don't really know why that bothered me so much, but it did. I looked through the peephole, nobody. But the bucket was sitting on the ground beside the ice machine. I figured whoever had it just walked back to their room already. I opened my door maybe 2 inches to grab the bucket and move it because I didn't want someone kicking it at 2 a.m. That's when I realized the guy across the walkway wasn't sitting in the chair anymore. The chair was empty. And I know this sounds small, but the TV in his room was still on, same exact angle, same blue light flickering on the wall. I closed my door immediately, not slammed, just quietly. Then I heard something scrape softly outside, not near the ice machine, right beside my door. I froze there for probably 30 seconds before hearing footsteps finally walk away. The next morning, I checked out around 6:50 a.m. and asked the woman at the front desk if the room across from mine had complained about noise. 'Cause I'd heard someone outside late. She looked confused for a second and said, 214? I said, yeah. She told me the room across from mine was empty. Had been for 3 days. I actually laughed because I thought she was messing with me. Then she said maintenance had removed the chair from that room earlier in the week because one of the legs broke, and I swear to God, that was the exact chair I saw somebody sitting in for almost an hour. Story 2. My neighbor's dog wouldn't stop watching the backyard. I lived in a duplex outside Columbus for about 1.5 years. Nothing fancy. Siege siding, uneven driveway. One of those neighborhoods where everybody owns at least one grill they never clean. The people next door were this older couple named Rick and Denise. Super normal. Quiet. Rick wore those white New Balance shoes everywhere and spent half his life mowing the lawn, even when it didn't need it. They also had this German shepherd named Murphy. Murphy was honestly the friendliest dog I'd ever met. Big dog, goofy. He'd carry around sticks way too large for his body and lean against your legs, like he thought he was a lapdog. This matters, because what happened later only felt wrong because of how normal he usually was. Behind our duplexes was this narrow patch of woods, not deep forest or anything, maybe 40 yards across before it opened up to another road. Mostly thin trees, overgrown brush, and a drainage ditch that smelled awful after rain. Murphy spent a lot of time outside, especially at night. Rick would let him out around 10:30 before bed, and usually you'd hear him running around for maybe 5 minutes before scratching to come back in. Then sometime in late September, Murphy started acting weird, not aggressive, just focused. The first night I noticed it, I was taking trash out around 11:40 p.m. and Murphy was standing completely still near the back fence staring into the woods. Didn't bark when he saw me, didn't wag his tail, just stood there. I remember joking, "You see a raccoon or something?" Nothing. The dog barely even blinked. A few seconds later, Rick came out onto the porch and called for him twice before Murphy finally backed away from the fence. Even then, he kept looking over his shoulder toward the trees. Rick laughed and said the dog had been doing that all week. At first, we all assumed there was an animal back there, but then it kept happening every night, same spot. Murphy would walk directly to the far left corner of the fence and just stare into the woods, sometimes for 10 or 15 straight minutes. And this dog was not calm about it either. His ears would stay pinned forward like he was listening for something specific. One night I got curious and used my phone flashlight to look into the trees from my side of the fence. Didn't see anything except brush moving a little from the wind. Still, Murphy immediately started growling when I pointed the light out there. Not loud barking, low growling, the kind dogs do when they're genuinely unsure about something. That actually got under my skin a little. I went back inside and locked the sliding door, which I normally never did unless I was leaving. A few nights later, things got stranger. I woke up around 1:17 a.m. Murphy was barking nonstop outside. Not playful barking either. Full losing his mind barking. I looked through my bedroom blinds toward the backyard. Murphy was at the fence again, except this time he wasn't looking into the woods. He was looking toward my back patio. I couldn't see much because the porch light wasn't on, but I remember getting annoyed thinking maybe a possum got onto the patio furniture. Then Murphy suddenly backed up, like fast, tail stiff, growling again, and I noticed something I still think about way more than I want to. The motion light near my patio steps wasn't turning on. It should been. Anything bigger than a cat usually triggered it immediately. There was definitely movement near the steps. I could hear it. Soft shifting sounds. I cracked my window just enough to listen. At first nothing. Then I heard what sounded like somebody whispering, not talking normally, more like muttering to themselves. I couldn't make out words. I shut the window immediately and honestly just stood there, trying to convince myself I imagined it. Murphy kept barking for another minute before Rick finally dragged him inside. The next morning I checked the patio thinking maybe an animal knocked something over. Instead, one of my patio chairs had been moved right up against the sliding door, not tipped over, positioned there, facing inward. I called off work that day, mostly because I suddenly felt weird being alone there. Rick came over later that afternoon after I told him about the chair. He got quiet for a second and asked me something I didn't expect. He said, "Did you hear somebody whistling last night?" Apparently around the same time Murphy started barking. Rick woke up because he heard short little whistle sounds coming from behind the duplexes, not loud, like somebody trying to get a dog's attention without waking people up. After that, Rick stopped letting Murphy outside at night entirely. And honestly, I started checking the backyard every single evening before closing the blinds. Nothing else major happened after that. Maybe 3 weeks later, the police were outside the wooded area behind our buildings around sunrise. 3 cars, flashlights, one officer walking through the brush. Nobody officially told us what happened, but later that afternoon, Denise mentioned somebody had apparently been sleeping out there for a while. What still bothers me is the timing, because the second the police showed up, Murphy stopped staring into the woods every night. Completely stopped. Story 3. The Uber ride that took a weird detour. This happened in early 2023 when I was living in Phoenix for work. I didn't have a car at the time because my apartment was close enough to the office that I could walk most days. Honestly, insurance prices out there were brutal anyway, so I used Uber constantly. One Friday night, I met a couple co-workers at this sports bar downtown. Nothing crazy. I had 2 beers over like 3 hours, ate way too many fries, and left around 12:30 because I had an 8 a.m. shift the next morning. I remember the exact time I booked the ride because my phone battery was at 9% and I was debating whether I should wait inside longer to charge it. Uber got there at 12:47 a.m., Silver Nissan Altima driver's name was Samir. Rating was high, like 496 or something. Normal guy, maybe late 30s. Quiet. Had one AirPod in. At first the ride was completely ordinary. We got onto the freeway, and I kinda zoned out checking emails and deleting junk notifications to save battery. Phoenix at night is weirdly empty once you get away from downtown. Just long stretches of road and those orange streetlights that make everything look half abandoned. About 10 minutes into the drive, I noticed we exited earlier than usual, not dramatically off route. Just unfamiliar. I figured maybe traffic or construction. Then I looked at the app again. The route line had updated, but it now added almost 11 extra minutes. I asked, "Hey, is there traffic ahead or something?" And this is where things first started feeling off. He didn't answer immediately, not in a rude way. More like he was thinking about what to say first. Then he goes, "Yeah, accident. That was it. No specifics." I checked ahead through the windshield, expecting brake lights or congestion somewhere, but the roads were empty. I almost said something else, but didn't, because I hate confrontation with strangers, especially trapped in a moving car at 1 in the morning. A minute or two later, my phone died. That changed the entire vibe instantly. It's weird how vulnerable you feel the second your screen goes black. Now, I couldn't see the route. Couldn't track where we were. Couldn't even pretend to text somebody. I started paying closer attention outside. We were no longer near the freeway. It was industrial looking. Warehouses, storage lots, random chain link fences, hardly any other cars, and the driver had gone completely silent, no radio either. I remember noticing this little detail that still bothers me. He kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror, but every time I looked up, he'd adjust the mirror slightly downward, like he didn't want me noticing how often he was checking. Then he made another turn into an even darker road. That's when I finally spoke up again. I said, "Hey man, I think my apartment's back the other direction." Again, pause. Then he says, "Short tat," but he said it quietly, almost distracted. Right after that, we passed a parked white van on the side of the road with its headlights off. And the second our car went by it, the van's headlights turned on. I felt this awful drop in my stomach because suddenly the whole situation started arranging itself in my head in a way I really didn't like. The van pulled out behind us, not speeding, just following at the same distance. At this point, I was fully awake, adrenaline dumping into my system. I remember grabbing my dead phone anyway, like it could somehow help. I started mentally tracking turns, because I genuinely thought I might need to jump out at a stop sign and run. Then something changed. We stopped at a red light under an overpass, and another car pulled up beside us. Just some random SUV with loud music. The Uber driver noticed it too, and for the first time the entire ride, he looked nervous. He checked the mirror fast twice, looked behind us at the van, then suddenly took a hard right turn. The second the light changed, not toward the dark road ahead, back toward the main street. The van behind us didn't follow. It kept going straight. Nobody spoke for maybe 2 full minutes after that. Then the driver finally said, "Your phone die?" I said, "Yeah." He nodded once like that confirmed something. After that, he drove completely normally, straight route. No more weird turns. He dropped me off outside my apartment around 1:19 a.m. Before I got out, I asked him why he went through those side roads earlier, and I swear this was his exact response. He goes, "I thought somebody was following me." Then he looked past me through the rear window for a second and added, "Happens sometimes late at night." I reported the route through the app the next day because the detour genuinely scared me, but Uber just gave me one of those generic responses and a $12 credit. Maybe the guy was paranoid, maybe I was. But I still think about how fast he changed direction once another vehicle appeared beside us at that intersection. Like whatever he thought was happening, he suddenly decided he didn't want to be alone on those roads anymore either.